We're having such fun. This is a great 3-day summit. Welcome back to the Sustainability Imperative, our 3-day virtual festival on all things sustainability. Thank you for joining us for track 2 today, the energy equation. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the American Petroleum Institute, for their support of this session. Today we will be talking with city leaders and energy industry experts for a comprehensive discussion on energy solutions and the industry's sustainability goals. Before we get started, remember you can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag The Hill Sustainability. I know it's a lot of letters and it's always frustrating, but use The Hill Sustainability. We're broadcasting live. We'll be taking your questions throughout the program. And if you experience any trouble with the live stream, please refresh the page. I think that will fix things. Joining me now is my friend, Dr. Daniel Yergin, Vice Chairman of IHS Markit, and he's author of last year's Wall Street Journal bestseller, The New Map, Energy, Climate, and the Clash of Nations. We're really excited to have him with us today to discuss energy security and the geopolitics of energy. I should say that Dan's books, I think they should all get Pulitzers, but he did get a Pulitzer for his book, which I want to go back to, The Prize, The Epic Quest for Oil, Money, and Power. And I interviewed him way back then on that. And I just want to say, Daniel, what I love about reading your books is they kind of give a kind of global, comprehensive snapshot of all things energy, all things geopolitical, all things private market and kind of in this area. And we have these snapshots in time. And so I know with your book, The New Map, you've given us another comprehensive snapshot. What are the essential parts of the map that are changing that you think our audience needs to understand and know about?
Well, thank you, Steve. And what I try and do is take people inside so they feel they're inside all of these developments. And I would point to 3 or 4 changes in the terrain. One is the change in the energy position of the United States, which kind of has been sort of forgotten. But 8 presidents in a row kept talking about energy independence. We have it now, and it's saving this country $400 billion a year. The second change is on U.S.-Chinese relations, and that has changed dramatically since 2015 in a very negative way. The third change is the changes that are coming in transportation, what I call auto tech. And the big changes, which is the subject of this session, is what's happening on climate. In the new map, I basically say we are in the after Paris, that is after the Paris Climate Conference, in which climate goals have become embedded in government policy, in the decisions of investors, and in the strategies of company. So it is a new terrain, and that's why I figured we needed a new map.
One of the things that I've been doing, on the sidelines of this summit is having meetings and discussion with a whole wide range of stakeholders in this. And it, it's interesting, the private equity, there's been a 4-fold increase over the last year in investment in renewables. Talk to oil and gas industry and how they're approaching sustainability and climate in new and different ways I hadn't heard. I'm always, as a journalist, to what degree should I be skeptical of what I'm hearing? How much of this is a fig leaf and how much of it is real? And when I read your book, you really did underline that what is happening in the dynamics is very different today, that the scale, that Paris, that the embedding, that the synergies between different players is different. Am I getting that right? Or are we being seduced into sort of thinking that we're going that direction and we're really not?
We're going through, we're now in the 312th year of the energy transition, which began in January 1709 in England when coal replaced wood for making iron. But what's happening now is a much faster transition where people are aiming, and as they look to that Glasgow UN conference in November, to do in 30 years what normally took a century or more. And wind and solar costs have come down. There are a lot of financial incentives and subsidies to invest in renewables. And at the same time, what I see is that companies, be they oil and gas companies or any other kind of companies, are saying we need an ESG strategy. We need to address emissions. We need to address carbon. And so I think it's all very real. And this is a major juncture in modern economic and technological history.
If I were a movie director, Dan, I would love to shoot your book, and you've got these characters in it at various points, stories that you tell about how we got shipping containers and giant ships, how we got the Tesla, various people who've begun to apply data to challenges. But the stories you tell of the individuals are fascinating because, many of them have gotten rich, but that's not what was driving them. They had an itch or had an obsessive compulsive. Can you just share with our audience, because I actually think beyond China and the big meta topics, the coolest thing are the people who are down at the nexus of some of these big inflection points.
Yeah, because you tend to think, oh, it's all the great forces of history. A lot of times it's personalities who, and I like your obsessive compulsive description of the people. Elon Musk is a very good example. There was a young man named J.B. Straubel who wanted to try and convince him to back an electric airplane. He said, no, this is at a fish restaurant in L.A. And he said, well, what about an electric car? And Musk said, I might be interested in that. And Musk a few years ago said if that lunch hadn't taken place, Tesla wouldn't exist today. That's one example. We've heard a lot about shipping today and all these 5,000 container ships that are bottlenecked and get stuck in the Suez Canal. There's a guy in 1956, a trucker, who had this idea, was trying to figure out how to get his stuff faster from the East Coast to Texas, and said, well, let's put it in containers and put it on ships, and made that happen. There's so many of these examples of, it's people, these individual human stories of people with incredible determination. And the shale revolution, people said the textbook said it wasn't possible. You can't do it. And one guy was obsessed enough to spend money on it for 16 years and kind of had a breakthrough. And it took another 5 years to get it all done. So these individuals really do make a difference in history. And their stories illuminate our times and help us understand where we're going. And I love telling those stories. Right now, the U.S. and China have the most dangerous point between the U.S. and China in military terms is Taiwan and the South China Sea. In 1933, this French captain sails to some islands and puts French flags on it that nobody lives on. And that becomes the beginning now of this 9-dash line that China has, which is at the center of U.S.-Chinese controversy today. So you've got to look for the people as well as the big forces of technology, history, and policy.
What I also love, Dan, about the book is that you don't pull punches about the equation of energy that we really have. There's always, in foreign policy realism, there's the world as it is, and there's, the idealists who want the world as they would hope it would be. And I think in that, what's fascinating is you see competition around renewables and technology and all of that, but there's also geopolitical competition around oil and gas and coal, of which still represents 80% of the global energy equation. Yesterday, Rod Shaw from the Rockefeller Foundation talked about, particularly in India and other places of the world, the number of coal plants that are continuing to come on in many parts of the world that also have this. I'm interested because you just had the Super Bowl of the oil and gas industry called CERAWeek, of which you're like, the Wizard of Oz. Mixing metaphors here, I know, but I think, what is your sense of what's going on in the oil and gas sector? One, about their mammoth presence and relevance, the geopolitical dimensions, but also how are they looking at themselves and their role with regards to climate and sustainability?
I think in that second part of the question, they're saying we need to be engaged, because at the end of the day, energy is not just about words or policies or ambitions. It's about engineering and technology. And you need big companies who can execute, who have engineering skills, and that's the energy companies. So one of the things that's on the agenda today is, can you use hydrogen to replace natural gas or mix with natural gas? And who are the companies who work with hydrogen today? They're oil and gas companies. So I think they know what's going on and they're adjusting. And what they bring to bear is technology. After all, the lithium-ion battery, which is the heart of the electric car today, was invented in an Exxon laboratory in 1976, when it was thought that the world was going to run out of oil, going back then. So in terms of your question, I would say the other part of the question, we're going to have a lot more electric cars. They're coming. GM has said no gasoline cars after 2035, but probably in the year 2050, there'll still be about 1 billion cars on the road that run on gasoline. And the medicines people take, they don't think about that. Those are petroleum products. The electric cars are 20% plastics. So the oil and gas industry will be part of the energy mix, but it'll be a more differentiated mix. And clearly you'll have a lot more renewables. And a key thing for renewable development is batteries, so you can store wind and solar generated electricity. The other thing is that the U.S., what's happened with the U.S. exporting oil, the U.S. now being energy independent, has changed geopolitics a lot. And you look at the Israeli United Arab Emirate peace treaty. Part of it's based on the premise that the U.S. is probably going to be less engaged in the Middle East in the future, and countries need to find their own security systems. And just the other day, I heard a U.S. senator say, "Oh, we have to right-size our commitment to the Middle East, back away from what's called the Carter Doctrine." And I thought that was really interesting, because if you're going to do that, you don't want to then turn around and start importing a lot more oil from the Middle East. So there's some contradictions that have to be sorted out there. But what's happened, India, we're exporting oil and gas to them. That's become one of the fundamentals of their energy and new political relationship with the United States. And if I can add one more thing, we talk about an energy transition in this country. You go to India, an energy transition means using more natural gas so that if they don't have indoor air pollution that comes from cooking with wood and waste products. So when I've been in India, and I just did a thing, as you said, at our CERAWeek conference with the Prime Minister of India, they talk about energy transitions, plural, not singular, because they have to deal with poverty.
Well, Daniel Yergin, I know you could only give me 10 minutes today, but I hope next time you'll give me 20 or maybe even 30. It's always fun to talk to you. Vice Chairman, IHS Markit, and author, and I really recommend that people, I used to say, it'd be a great read on a long airplane ride, but there are lots of other things we're doing now as we're not flying around as much. But the best thing you could do is get the new map, Energy, Climate, and the Clash of Nations. Daniel Yergin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and great to be on with you, Steve. I appreciate it. Take care.